Well, welcome to the Leadership Lounge. It's great to have you with us here again. Today we are looking again at Everyday Alchemy, and we're looking particularly at reframing and rebuilding as part of that process. We've already explored looking at in the moment how you make the best of it, and today we're going to be looking at the last part about afterwards, how you reflect on it and improve things. The tables have been turned again, and I'm going to be interviewed by my good friend here, Anna Hennell-James. So welcome, Anna.
Lovely to be here again.
Yeah, and I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Colin. So for people who might be joining us for the first time in our Everyday Alchemy journey, Colin, can you give us a summary as to what it's all about?
Yeah, so Everyday Alchemy is about turning and transforming your trash into treasure. So it's about in the moment, making the very best at the moment. So we've looked in our first podcast about pausing, reflecting, and then responding. And by doing that, you gain as much control as you can of the situation rather than the situation controlling you. And then afterwards, Everyday Alchemy is about then continuing that journey of distilling, a bit like ancient alchemists would have their potions and they'd be distilling to try and turn everyday metals into gold. Afterwards, the everyday alchemist, what they do is they distill what's happened and they review it. So we've looked already at revisiting, going back and looking afresh. Yep. That was in our last podcast, and reviewing with new kind of information that you've gleaned the situation. And then today we're going to be looking at reframing and rebuilding. So it's how you move on to that. So it's those kind of core steps of in the moment, just pausing, reflecting, responding, and then afterwards revisiting, reviewing it, reframing it and rebuilding. So that the ultimate thing as part of that process is you kind of, you glean and learn stuff from it, so you grow from the experience. So it's about developing a deep resilience so that you don't just survive, but you actually thrive and grow, even from the most challenging situations.
Sounds good. So we are reframing and rebuilding today. Do you want to take us through that first part then, the reframe?
Yeah, so like the first of all, as we've just said, you have to go back and revisit it and just look afresh, like a drone, have a look over it, look at things that maybe you didn't see at the time. Then you're reviewing it to kind of understand the perspectives that might have been going on. And then reframe, which is the first part of what we're going to look at today, is about the transformation. So in the book, I throw in the occasional Latin word. So I've got transformare, which is, it's about on the other side of form. That's where the original Latin word comes from. So you're in one form and it's going to another form. So what we're trying to do from this is, what could this look like? What am I learning from this? And what could the possibilities look like? What things could I do differently? So the situation I've just been was in this form, but I could take it to a new form now. What could that look like? So that's what the process is looking at, is looking at what can I learn from this, but what could look differently as part of this process.
Okay, so that sounds like as we go through this reframing process, there's quite a lot to unpick and explore. So what sort of process do you go through as you reframe a situation?
Yeah, so there is quite a lot you could explore. And what we're doing, both in that kind of revisit and now particularly this reframing, is we're thinking about the different aspects that could change. So in the book I list a number. There's quite a few here, so I've actually got them written down. So the first, they are psychology. So in terms of our psychology, what could I change within myself? Okay. Knowledge, what knowledge could I glean or gain to become better? Skills, behaviour, and the situation. So with all of this, we're looking at what's within our control. So when we looked at the earlier stuff, in moments, we're not in control of a lot of things. We're not in control of other people's thinking, other people's behaviour, but there are some things we're in control of. So when we're looking at changing the form in these are areas we can look in control of. So the first one is psychology. So this is our own thinking and our own behaviour. So the first thing is just to say, well, what did I notice about my thinking and my behaviour? And what might I need to work on? What could I work on? So I often talk with my coaching clients that we can't necessarily stop the initial thought that comes in, but we can change how we process, how we deal with it. So it might be looking at in the moment, what was my thinking there, but what could it be differently? How could I change or transform that? So if I had thinking, for example, I was in a conversation with someone, maybe holding a challenging conversation with someone, and as I've revisited and reviewed it, I've noticed all my thinking. I was telling myself that I was, like in my case, I'm just the son of a man who drove a tractor. He's a great man, my dad, but that's what he did, and we were poor and we didn't have a lot, and so that thinking can sometimes come in. It's an element of what people call imposter syndrome. It isn't a syndrome, but it's imposter thinking. So I may have noticed, oh yeah, I was thinking in that moment that I'm not. Who am I to do that? And so I might be thinking, I need to transform that psychology within myself. Now, I can't necessarily stop that initial thought coming in, but maybe I can change how I view that. So I'm telling myself, oh, that means I'm not up to much, but I could go, yes, I am, aren't I? And I've learned so much in that context. I've learned so much as I've had that rigor and determination to grow and do the things that I did. In fact, my life experiences through being the son of a farmhand and stepping out and going into teaching and then becoming a head teacher and all the stuff I've done since. Yeah, actually, all those experiences really helped me in this context.
So it's the same initial thought, but it's a shift in the response and onward action.
Yeah, so we're taking what was in that form and transforming it to a different form. This is no longer a thing of weakness. Actually, I need to change that thinking. When that thought comes to mind, I need to remind myself, actually, all the experiences that I've had actually helped me to this position. I've met lots of interesting people when I was the son of a farmhand. Some farmers who would call not just a spade, but a bloody shovel, and therefore learning how to deal with those kind of characters actually have helped me develop skills. So it's just taking your thinking and thinking, what was it? Was it helpful? If it wasn't, how do I change? How do I kind of frame this now? Instead of it being seen as something negative, how could it possibly be positive? Yeah. So that's psychology. Then we've got knowledge. So again, as we've revisited it and reviewed it, we may have felt, oh, actually, I don't think I had enough knowledge in that context of that item. So an example from being in education, for example, I might have been having a conversation with a parent about something, maybe to do with SEND needs for children. And I might be having that conversation and then I'm reflecting afterwards, oh, I don't think I had enough knowledge of that particular condition. I need to go and either read up on it, I need to go and speak to an expert about it, so that in the future I've deepened my knowledge of that.
So it's that sort of background information you're using to inform that conversation. Yeah.
And another context might be, again, going back to that holding a kind of challenging conversation with someone might feel, look, I had that, but I don't think I really knew the core steps of how to hold a challenging conversation. So I need to go up and read up or go on some training around some core steps about holding a challenging conversation. If anyone is in that, come and talk to me. We run a great little course on it. But that is that reframing is understanding where was perhaps the deficit and what knowledge then do I need to gain as part of that. So
you can move on and be better at it next time.
Yeah, so we've looked in all of our sessions in terms of what everyday alchemy is about. It's about growth. It's not about the one-off. We talked in previous sessions about Jane the artist. She's making a painting. That painting is a one-off, but she talks about it's the artistry that she's learning ready for the next painting and the next painting, and therefore every experience becomes a thing of growth, so that her painting skills, etc., grow as part of that. So we are thinking about it not as a binary one-off moment. This is about an ongoing learning moment. So that's where that reframing allows you to go beyond this moment, that even if I felt, I was slightly on the back foot on that knowledge, it's okay, because I'm going to now go and learn from it, meaning next
time it will be better.
Which is where that whole, not just surviving, but thriving, we're taking from the experiences. There was a deficit. We might just say something, that was a bit like the worthless metal, but we're transforming it then into something of worth for the future.
For the future, yeah.
Yeah. Then the next one was skills. So a bit similar to the knowledge one. What did I need to develop skill-wise? So again, we might be, I've just had a conversation with someone and I found that really hard. And we might be saying, I think I need to develop my listening to understand skills. And so it'd be the same principle as the behaviour one. I need to now either go and do some research or go and do some training or be mentored by someone who I know is really good at this in order to improve that particular skill in that context. And for some situations, there might be a whole range of these. For others, there might be, oh no, I was absolutely fine in my psychology. My thinking was great. It might be one aspect.
Just one thing to tweak to make it better next time.
Which is why in the book I list them all, because then you can almost work through them as like a checklist. Was there anything in that I need to develop? Anything in that? Next thing was behaviour. So what might I need to change with regards to that? So again, this will, some of these are linked because they're linked, for example, to your psychology. So you might, for example, have noted in a conversation you've just had with someone, oh, actually, I think I was a bit sharp at that point. My tone was a bit abrupt. Okay, so what was my thinking there? Because often you and I will know this from working with children, behaviour is communication. It's telling us something, isn't it? Yeah. So if we are being a bit abrupt with someone, then there is something behind that.
What's driving that?
So it will link to your psychology. What was I feeling then in that moment? Well, let's just think about my body. What did I notice? Oh yeah, actually my heart rate rose a little then and my neck was flushing. I think I was actually a bit angry with what that person had just said. Okay, so how do I then reframe from this? How do I change my behavior then? If someone is behaving like that, what strategies or steps might I need to take differently next time to manage those emotions within myself? Do I, and we might say, well, I perhaps need to work really on my pausing then. If I take time to pause and then think what might be going on for that person as to why they spoke that way, or if I use questioning a bit more after I've paused, that might help give me calming time and might help them to realise how they were behaving in that moment. So so the behaviour one will link a bit to your psychology, but it's again just noted, was there anything in my tone, my body language, how I responded? And the last one is situational. So it's just thinking in the situation I was in, is there anything that might need to change, e.g. the room or the time? So in the story, we talk about a fictional character, Belinda, and she's arranged a meeting with one of her colleagues, Richmond, not Kingston, as we've talked about in a previous podcast, where I kept muddling the names up when I was writing it. And she'd arranged this with Richmond in a private room. But what she hadn't realised until she'd revisited and reviewed it, is actually some of the blinds weren't working so people could see. And Richmond had still had to come in past everyone to get to that room. Space, So her kind of reframing of this was, if I do this again, I really must make sure the room is well away from someone if I'm going to have a challenging conversation with them. But equally, it could be, what was the temperature of the room like? What was the light of the room like? Was there too much light or it was too dark? All of those things could influence the meeting that you've then had. So it's just looking at the situation. It can equally be the time, e.g., I had that meeting with them at 4:45, 15 minutes before the end of the day. And I did that for good reason. It's so that then they could go off and calm down rather than have to go back to work. But then as you kind of have revisited it and reviewed it, you've realised, actually, they were really tired at the end of the day. And so was I really tired at the end of the day.
So not the best time
so maybe I'll try a different time next time. So it's just thinking, what was there in terms of the physical situation? Might it change either time or room? Or, again, the number of people present. So you might then go, actually, if I'm in that position again, and I've been in a situation where one person's got a problem, but there's a group of people that have come with them, well, at that point, you've got an audience. And so you might, if you had entertained them all together, you might then have thought afterwards, actually, if I'm going to do this again, I thank everyone for coming, but just takes a person.
Talk to the person that's got the issue.
So that reframing of the situation can be in all those sorts of contexts.
And one of the things that you talk about in this chapter as well that I found quite interesting, Colin, was the locus of control. And actually how an awareness of that can really help you manage those situations and within your reframing. So can you talk to us a bit more about that?
Yeah. So we probably don't often use the word locus of control. So it's a bit of a mathematical term. So locus meaning point. And so you're looking at your point of control. So anxiety comes in us when we feel out of control. Extreme moments which cause trauma, where we feel so out of control, we feel helpless. So when we are managing situations, it's about finding what is in my control. So we're looking for the point where we can control. So it's the locus, where we bring the point of control back to us. And it's recognizing that some things are out of our control and some things are in our control. So we don't hold on to the things we can no longer control, e.g. someone's behavior, or maybe, the timing of something that's happening to us, but we start to think about what's within our control. I talk in the book about, so I've got it listed here, so I get the full quote. So in Alcoholics Anonymous, they have a phrase that they use, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I've quoted that in the book because I think that is brilliant, not just if you are looking to overcome an addiction, but actually for anything in life. Because the challenge, that's the reason we get so anxious, is because we're feeling out of control of stuff.
But it is quite hard, isn't it, to be surrounded by something that you cannot control, and to actually take that moment and go, do you know what, I cannot control that, so there is no point in expending time and energy on trying to control it.
And of course, what's happening, there are some physiological things that are happening to us, which I think we've talked about before, but I'll mention it again, in that when we start to feel out of control, our brain has picked up, hang on, this feels like a threat. So it's released adrenaline and cortisol. Cortisol goes to things like our heart to pump it faster, breathing to shorten and quicken, affects the stomach, and it also will affect the logical thinking part. So some cortisol, they will just slow our logical thinking. So we just do the reactive, basic primal function to either fight, flight, or freeze. So of course it is hard if we've really started to get ourselves anxious, because this thinking part is starting to get all a bit stodgy. So in that moment, it is about using some of the other techniques we talked about. Just pause. If you can, maybe do some cortisol reduction. So just ground yourself, 5 things I can see, 5 things I can touch, 5 things I can hear. Just get some slow breathing. So we talked about 5, 5, 5, in for 5, hold for 5, out for 5. If you can't hold for that long, we said before, shorten it to 4 or even 3, but it's just slowing it down. And that then will reduce some of your cortisol. Then perhaps you're ready to think about, right, what is it I'm now in control of? So I can't control their thinking, I can't control their behavior, I can't control the way they're speaking to me, but what I can control is the thinking I now take on. So we said before, I can't control my initial thoughts, but I can now choose how I choose to deal with them. I can control my behavior. I can control the knowledge I draw upon. I can control whether I ask for just an adjournment while I compose myself. There are lots of things we're in control of. And what you'll find is almost a sense of beauty. It sounds a bit weird, this, but when we let go of the things that are just out of our control. So maybe there's something really going wrong, and the point we just go, okay, I can't control this. I'm going to let go. It pains me, but there is almost a sense of peace. And then you can go, okay, so I can't stop this bad thing from happening, but I can now control who I want to be in this moment. What story do I want to write? What's my little mantra here? What values do I want to live by in this moment? Then we're bringing the locus of control back to us. So I tell in the story again, I tell a story about my daughter Sophie, who has been looking to move house, and it's been one of those horrendous house moves for her. Got the buyer, all was going wrong. And it wasn't going to kind of happen. And what Sophie did then afterwards, as she reflected on it, she's going, okay, so what's happened? What can I do? What's within my control? And she decided, okay, I can't stop this sort of current deal from falling through, this current buyer, but what I can control is the knowledge I now go and read up on. I can control how I behave and respond in this situation. I can control the values. And consequently, in the midst of her potentially losing the house she wanted to buy, she had still that sense of calm and peace obviously it's still upsetting, but she had that because she then found the bit that she could control rather than the bit she couldn't. Now, the good news is she found another buyer. It's still progressing, and hopefully that next buyer will come through. So, so that's a good example of, as that happened, she just went, right, I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to review what's happening here, revisit it, review it. Right, now, who do I want to be in this moment? And that helped her think about what she could control, her locus, her point of control, rather than the points that she couldn't control.
Thanks, Colin. And somebody else that you introduced us to in this chapter is Steve Peters and his book, Path Through the Jungle. And you reference his sort of explanations around stones of life. And how these might need reframing after a situation. So can you talk us through what stones of life are and where the reframing of them would come from?
So Steve Peters' brilliant book, Path Through the Jungle, recommend it to people to read. It's based on his work, The Chimp Paradox, and it helps people just understand themselves more clearly. The stones of life are really all our early experiences that we go through, that we make sense of, that then create almost like the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. They are like your core things that almost the paradigm that you understand things through. So let me give you a simple but slightly kind of diverse example. So my mum, when she was younger, was bitten by a black dog. She was chased by a black dog. So one of her then stones of life was all black dogs, all dogs are bad and scary. Because her experience up until that point was
would tell her that.
But then, of course, me and my brothers, as we became grown-ups, really cruel, we all have dogs, some of which have been black dogs. And obviously she's initially scared, but then realises, oh, actually, their dogs are okay. So she's now faced with her stone of life was that all dogs, particularly black dogs, are bad. But now she's got some different experiences that mean, well, hang on, this stone of life is now being challenged because I'm coming across dogs that are actually quite nice and all they want to do is lick me or say hello to me. Now maybe I have to change my paradigm that it's not all black dogs are bad, but some dogs, when not trained or looked after properly, can be bad. Or I can have some bad experiences from. So that's a slightly sideline one. In the book, I talk about Belinda. So she's had several experiences. She's a young leader, and she is growing in her kind of leading of teams. But she's had some experiences that mean she's come up with this kind of stone of life that when I lead people, they get upset. It's because I don't lead very well. That's how she's made sense of it. So she's taken some known facts about what was happening, and she's made sense of it with this.
She's pieced them together in that particular
and of course,
structure.
the more she's had some experiences where people have got upset or stroppy, she then has confirmation bias, and she then layers it and layers it. But in the book, we talk about her work with her coach, and it's helped her to see that actually, let me take a step back, and they did exactly the things of revisiting it and reviewing it and understanding that, oh, here are some facts, but there are some other ways of making sense of, in this particular example, her interaction with Richmond, that actually, oh, he had stuff going on at home. Actually, he's got some issues that he's working through. And when she looked at that, she realised, oh, so maybe it isn't all about me.
It's not all about me.
So then she had to reframe her stone of life around who she was and her leadership, and she reframed it as that when I lead people, some people will get upset. It's sometimes because they've got things going on. It's sometimes I need to develop some of my leading skills. So there's that reframing. It's not that she chucks the whole thing out, but she reframes it. She chisels away at the edges of it to reshape it so that now it's more fit for purpose and is probably more realistic. So it's that reframing of our stones of life. There's two examples there, but for us, we will be telling ourselves something. And so it might be, oh yeah, they might maybe have had a series of friends that have then just let them down and so they don't want to be friends with you anymore. And so therefore they might tell themselves, oh, it's all about me, I can't hold on to friends. And so you might then have another experience though, where a friend does stick with you. And so now you've got to go, I now need to relook at this. Maybe
yeah.
my stone of life isn't quite correct, that it isn't all about
Yeah.
me. So in all sorts of contexts, it's just when we then revisit it and review it, and we're at that point of reframing, we are thinking about our paradigms, our
Yeah.
stone of life, our principles. It's chiseling away at them and reshaping them to now perhaps be more fit for purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm guessing that once that reframing has happened and you've learned to unpick it a bit, to look at it from a different perspective, and to shift your thinking along that, then you're in a position to do the final part that we're talking about, which is the rebuild.
That was very smooth, Anna. We moved nicely into rebuilding there.
So what drives then how we manage that rebuilding phase?
Yeah, so from the reframing, you might have a whole load of things that you think, well, this could look different in all these types of ways. You know, some of the areas we talked about, like our psychology, our behaviour, the room. And so it's thinking about, because we can't do everything all at once. And so there's some key principles that I think can help us. And the first one is, who are we becoming? This links to, I talked in the book about Trevor Waldock's book, Becoming Mandela, and he talks in that book where that, who are we becoming? How are we changing? And so there is a sense, the person that we're becoming or want to become, our identity isn't fixed. We might be working on something that could be a key driver for us. In the book, I tell a fictional story in each chapter of an ancient alchemist, and in this chapter, the apprentice discovers a room where there are samples of all of the process of the alchemy of where he's tried to turn some metal into gold. And next to each of these is a sketch of the alchemist. And the apprentice notices that the alchemist, of course, has changed, because he once was a young alchemist and he's been working on this for years, and now he's an older, wiser alchemist. But he noticed the physical change. But of course, there will have been kind of that mental and emotional change as well as part of that process. And that was really just kind of a metaphor to show that as we are going through life, we should hopefully be changing for the better, learning and kind of distilling stuff. And so it is thinking about, what we're going through is shaping us as a person. So the first part as we rebuild can be, who do I want to be from this? So as I've looked at all of my revisiting, we're probably particularly looking at our psychology and our behaviour here. Is there something in here about who I want to become? So we may have said, for example, I want to be more patient. I want to be someone that is more compassionate. You know, we may have been thinking, this is the person I want to become. So therefore, as we've looked at what happened and all of the possibilities around the reframing, we're perhaps picking some that are really going to help us to become that person. I give an example in the book of one of the real everyday alchemists, which is Ross. So Ross is a head of school in a brilliant group of schools in Peterborough that I've done work with. And Ross gave permission for his story to be shared as part of this. And he was talking to me, and I record it in the book, about how his school had changed. So his school was in a position that really needed a lot of real direct hands-on stuff from him. He'd done a lot of work with his people, he'd grown them as leaders, and so they've gone through that transformation of being no longer dependent. Some of them were now independent leaders, some of them were now interdependent. They really knew their stuff, they understood the values, and he recognized that he needed to change particularly his style of leadership, but almost he needed to bring aspects about who he was more to fruition and some less to fruition. So I do some work with coaching clients. Sometimes I say, imagine that you've got like a board of governors in your head. What are the voices that you're hearing? And to decide which voices do you at this moment need nearer to you, immediately your right and left hand.
Yeah, to really listen to.
To really listen to them, and which voices do you need to move further apart? And at different points in our life, and particularly in this context, looking at his job as a head of school, he needed to chat. At one point, he would have needed certain voices closer to him. Now he was recognizing he needed to change, and he was working out the different aspects of himself. So he was a CrossFit kind of athlete, and so he knew he was really strong on competition, both in his CrossFit but also as a person. Driven, e.g., we've got to hit these targets as a school. But he also knew his passionate purpose, which was to father, and that pure lovely element of like nurture and guides, and that fathering also means at point being able to let go and just be there for them when they need you, to be a wise consultant. And obviously at different times our fathering, parenting will have different aspects to it. And so for him, he was working out who did he want to become, knowing what was needed by his people as well, that he worked for. So that's the first one, is kind of who do we want to become. I think another area that's really important, again, is your purpose. So what is your purpose? And therefore, looking at all the stuff that could change, how do I use this to fuel my purpose? So each of us have one. Most people don't know what on earth it is. They might know what they like doing, but they don't know why they like doing. Again, it's a key part of work I do with people. My passionate purpose is to empower people. I do that through my coaching, my training, hopefully my podcast, hopefully my book, people reading, oh yeah, that was empowering. So if I was looking at a situation I'd gone through and I was thinking, right, I'm now going to rebuild from this. What do I want to change form of? What do I become better? I'd be saying to myself, which of these really supports my purpose? So if, for example, I had been reviewing a situation and thinking, I don't think I was listening to understand enough in that conversation, then that might be one that I really do want to rebuild, because listening to understand is a key helper to then empower someone.
People,
if I don't listen to understand someone, then I really can't empower them, because I don't know where they're coming from. So that is the one that I might then take on as part of that process. But for different people, you'll have a different purpose. And again, the risk of sounding like an advert, if you're thinking, I know what my passionate purpose is, come and book a coaching session with me and I'll help you find it. And you'll find that so liberating as part of the process. But yeah, going back to the principle of rebuild, having those two things, who am I becoming and what bits fit my passionate purpose, would be really helpful. And another aspect of what's current, what am I perhaps doing a lot of at the moment that's going to be most useful? So if I am holding a lot of challenging conversations with people, then I really need to rebuild either on knowledge or skills that will help me to do that even better next time, and that needs to be my focus. So it might also be looking at what's really current, what are the issues that I'm really facing at the moment, and that might be where you direct your energy, because that's what's needed at this moment.
Okay, so I have another question around this rebuilding, Colin. I have learnt to never be surprised at things that appear in your books or our conversations. But in this chapter, we also talk about inhalers.
Yes.
What do inhalers have to do with rebuilding?
Rebuilding. So this comes again as part of I guess it links a number of those areas we've talked about in the reframing around thinking about your psychology and your behaviour. So in your kind of review and your reframe, you may have recognised in yourself, actually, I felt so uncomfortable in that meeting, or I felt really stressed, or I was really quite overwhelmed even going into that meeting. I recognised, my stress cup was already full up before I even had that conversation. So if you've done that, you might be recognising that actually I've got a lot on and I'm perhaps not managing my emotions and my behaviour. So I talk in the book about inhalers. Now, inhalers come in all sorts of shapes and colours. And traditionally we may be used to the blue inhaler. And the blue inhaler is reactive, e.g. someone is having an asthma attack, struggling to breathe, and then they take their inhaler and the chemicals within that open up your airways. A reliever opens it up to enable you to breathe better. But you can also get, if you have asthma, proactive inhalers. They can come in different colours. In the book I talk about pink inhaler because that's the one I'd come across, but they could be brown, they can be purple, for different aspects depending what you've been diagnosed with asthma. And the idea is you take those proactively to reduce, so that your airway is already being kind of worked on, your alveoli or whatever being, open more, so you are less likely to have an asthma attack.
And to need the blue one.
So I use this as a metaphor to understand, for us with our emotions and our anxiety, there might be some things that if we were to proactively do, will be reducing our stress even before we come into things, or there might be some things that we need to now work in reactively as a blue inhaler. So in the book, I list some different types that will work for that. So I talk in there about relational, physical, mental, and spiritual. If we're looking to manage ourselves, one of the ways is to have more wholesome in those kind of areas, depending also on who you are. For some, it might be very much more the relational. Actually, spending time with my friends helps me to just see a fuller picture of life and therefore feel calmer. For some, it might be spiritual. It might be actually, yes, if I follow my spiritual practices, or if I go be outside in the countryside and see and if I go for a walk in the woods, there's something there that just gives me a spiritual connection. That might be for them, but it's just recognizing what is it for you. So it could be relational, time with friends, with pets, with family. It could be physical. It could be going for walks. It could be a specific exercise regime, whatever you know works for you. It could be mental. It could be reading. It could be that listening to podcasts, just stimulating myself mentally, just helps me to just get a wider bit. It could be just reading storybooks. In fact, one of the real life people, which I'll talk a bit more about in a minute, Roanne, she loves reading fiction, and that helps. That's part of her thing to replenish. Or it could be spiritual, like we said. It could be these particular meditations, or going to church, or in the woods, whatever is your spiritual connection.
Whatever fulfills that within
you, that it's making sure you give time to that. The challenge for many of us is we're so busy in our modern day world. Our work causes so much pressure on us that we give more time to work and less to this. Means we don't have that balance, which means we are feeling our whole world is full of the problems at work. Whereas when we take time for these other elements, the proactive, that then helps. And then the blue inhalers are in the moment when you're feeling that stress and anxiety, when you're noting in your body, oh, hang on, my heart's pumping faster, my breathing is changing, that we take time in that moment, even if it's just a short moment, to take a metaphorical inhaler to calm that. And we've talked about that, I think, in a previous session, but I'll mention it again here. There are certain things that will help reduce our cortisol. So it is about slowing that breathing down with the 5-5-5. That sends the signal back from the lungs to the brain to say we're not in fight or flight mode. We're in normal mode. So the brain goes, oh, okay, maybe we're not. To take time to ground yourself, to look for 5 things you can see, 5 things you can hear, 5 things you can touch, 5 things to be thankful for. What that does, it just grounds you in the moment rather than futureize, brings your brain back to the present. And again, thankfulness, for example, helps to reduce cortisol. There's been research on that. Peace and quiet, thankfulness, and exercise. So go for a walk in the woods, which is peaceful and quiet, and think of 5 things to be thankful for. You're like triple lining to do that.
And just bringing everything back down to that calmer moment to then process things, deal with them, move on.
So, and again, sometimes in the moment we think I haven't got time, but actually we do. So even just the 5-5-5 breathing 5 times, that's only 75 seconds. So if you're about to go into a meeting, but hang on, my heart rate's up, I am feeling stressed, even just that will help to do that. So when we're doing the rebuilding, we're thinking about what did I note about the run up and in the moment. And if we think, actually, I have been mega busy. I haven't been going to the gym. I haven't been taking my daily meditations or going for my walks in the woods, or whatever your thing is. It doesn't have to be relational, physical, mental and spiritual. It can be whichever ones work for you. And if you're not sure, try some of them out. The rebuild is saying, I hadn't done some of that. So I need to put some of those back into my life. Otherwise, I'm going to keep hitting this. The rebuild is looking back at the moment. Was I stressed in the moment? Did I then take some time to breathe or stand in a Wonder Woman pose or whatever your inhaler is in the moment, the blue inhaler? And if you didn't, it might then be saying, I need to revisit that then and put that back in. If I'm in that moment again, I put that back in. So that's where the inhalers are. They're a metaphor about how you're proactively managing your emotional levels, and then how you're managing them reactively as well. And if you didn't have some of those in, or if you did but they weren't working, it might be about changing and rebuilding, putting in a different routine as part of that process.
So what I'm hearing, Colin, is there are lots of elements to the rebuild, but is there a particular structure or series of steps that we go through to not miss anything on that rebuild process, so that we can move forward with it effectively?
Yeah, so there are 4 key steps I talk about, and on this particular occasion, I do like a bit of alliteration. I've managed to put them into 4 Ps. So it's priority, power, partner, and plan. So the kind of steps are, first of all, priority. What's the important thing for me at the moment? So that links back to what I was saying earlier. What's the real issue going on for me at the moment? And those are the bits that I need to work on. Power is what will have the biggest impact. So if there's several things you're thinking I could rebuild, you're looking at them going, which is the one that's going to get me the biggest shift first? Yeah. So there's some work on things like Black Box Thinking by Matthew Said. It's all about reviewing it and then saying, what do I change? And what we're looking for is the biggest change. Then you'll be looking for little marginal gains.
Smaller incremental
Yeah.
ones,
So you might look at it and go, well, I've made some big changes and had some real shift, but then you're still looking at, out of all these left, which one might give me the biggest marginal gain, if that makes sense, as part of that process. Then we look for partner. So we might be thinking about, is there anyone I need to partner with to help me with this? That might be in who could I get some input on, some training on to develop my knowledge or my skills? Or it might be, who do I work with perhaps next time to mentor me in the moment? So we might think about that as part of your partnering. And the last one is plan, which is, okay, so now I've decided, that's the current issue. This is the thing that's going to get me the biggest gain. I've decided who's going to help me. You then think, what are the first 3 or 4 steps? Ideally, just the first 3 that you're going to take. If you do a big long list, you'll get lost in it. So even if it's just, what's my first step? If the thing is quite big and daunting, well, what's the first thing I'm going to do? And if you can have your first 3 steps, you'll get a bit of momentum to then move into it. So those are the 4 key steps for rebuilding as part of that process.
So I feel now like we've talked about and covered the whole process of everyday alchemy. So what's the benefit of doing all of that and going through that process then? Why should we all be doing this?
Why should you become an everyday alchemist? Well, I think it is transformare. I think it will transform you. I think it will also give you a sense of peace, because the first thing is, life is not binary pass fail. There are so many people I've worked with and so many people I come across that put self-pressure on themselves because I must get this right, because if I don't, it'll be wrong. And we see it as binary. Whereas situations can be both good and bad. They can be both right and wrong. And so it's being able to say, okay, this is the situation. It is neither right or wrong. It is a situation. And so by starting this approach, we start to look about learning and growth and the longer term rather than just the one moment. And therefore that allows us to live life perhaps a little bit more wholesomely. We're not on this high pressure, high stakes moments all the time. I think by doing this process of pausing, reflecting in the moment to make the very best that you can in that moment, the best that you could with all that you had in that moment that you were in, and then by afterwards revisiting it, reviewing it, reframing it, and then rebuilding from it to move the next way forward, we develop true resilience. So people tend to think resilience is just about surviving the moment. I had great resilience. I got through that man shouting at me. That's only the first step of resilience. The key bit is revisiting it, reviewing it, reframing it, re-understanding it, and rebuilding from it, so that you thrive, not just survive. You become better at what you're doing, you become more confident, you become more chilled about it because you're actually learning all the time and you've helped yourself with that. So it helps us to learn from those situations, and it helps us develop effectively a growth mindset rather than this pass-fail element. It's all about growth. It helps us shape and become better, and it becomes a learning process. You learn what works for you as well. So just to recap, I mentioned earlier that we were talking about those inhalers, and I mentioned Roanne. She has learnt, as well as reading a book, she's learnt the sorts of things that then help her. She's learnt that holding a warm cup of tea helps. She's learned that stroking her cat. So that's another thing around the physical and the relational. Stroking a pet. She's learned that works for her. So we begin to put less pressure on ourselves because we learn what is it about myself? So we start to learn self-discovery about how do I work best as well? What do I need to put into my life, both that proactively and reactively? And so it becomes this journey of growth about ourselves, but journey of growth about the skills and behavior. And it also just takes the pressure off, because like the artist that we mentioned, like Jane the artist, we don't just see these moments as a one-off painting. It's about what we learn of our art to keep growing and keep improving.
Growth.
Yeah. So it becomes growth, and it just becomes almost a joy each time. What have I learned from today? What are my nuggets I've picked out from this? So
very powerful.
Yeah. Good. So I think that's ended our bit here about rebuild, isn't it, Anna? And in our next session, we're going to be looking at the so what. So we've learned all of these things about in the moment, pausing, reflecting, responding, and then afterwards revisiting, reviewing, reframing, and rebuilding. And we're growing and we're becoming this thriving person. But is that it? Is it all about us? Yeah. So in our next session, we've been looking about the so what. So thank you for interviewing me today, Anna.
Pleasure.
Thank you, guests, for joining us on the Leadership Lounge. It's been great to spend time with you, and we look forward to you joining us in our next session.